My name is Audrey Peterson. I'm 29 years old. 8 months earlier, he'd slid a ring onto my finger in our kitchen, hands trembling just enough to feel sincere. 3 years together before that. We had timelines, a venue deposit, a shared calendar that still had color-coded reminders for things like final tasting and send save the dates. I believed in the solidity of all of it, the quiet, unglamorous kind of love that shows up on time and keeps promises. That belief lasted right up until 3 days before Valentine's Day. He asked me to sit down in the living room, the way people do when they're about to say something they've practiced in their head. The TV was off. The room felt staged, too neat, too intentional. I noticed it immediately, the way my body always seems to know before my mind catches up. "I've been thinking," he said, fingers interlaced, elbows on his knees. Serious face, careful tone. "About us," he continued, "about whether we're really right for each other." My stomach dropped. It wasn't dramatic, no sharp pain, just that slow, sinking sensation, like an elevator cable loosening. "Where is this coming from?" I asked, already bracing myself. "I just need to know if what I feel for you is real love," he said, "or if it's just comfort, familiarity." I stared at him. The word familiarity landed wrong, like an insult dressed up as introspection. "We're engaged," I said quietly. "You proposed 8 months ago." "I know," he said quickly, "and I meant it. I did. But lately I've been wondering if I said yes because I genuinely want to spend my life with you, or because it was expected." Expected. He didn't say it cruelly. That almost made it worse. "Because you're safe," he added. There it was. The word he probably thought was neutral, maybe even complimentary. Safe. Like something you settle for, like a padded room, like a place you hide when you don't want to risk anything real. "So what are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew. "I want a break," he said, "just for a little while. To see if I miss you. To see if being apart makes me realize how much I need you." The timing wasn't lost on me. Valentine's Day was in 3 days. The reservation I'd made 2 months ago at the Italian place he loved. The weekend trip I'd planned. The earrings already wrapped and hidden in my dresser drawer. "I know the timing isn't great," he added, watching my face. "The timing is perfect," I said flatly. He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means you get to be single on Valentine's Day," I said. "Free to do whatever, or whoever, without technically cheating. And if it doesn't work out, you come back to me, to safe old me." His face hardened. "That's not fair." "I'm trying to be honest with you," he said. "This is me being real." "Honest would have been talking about this before you proposed," I said. "Or before I said yes. Or before we put down a deposit on a wedding venue." "I didn't know how I felt then," he said. "And now you suddenly do?" I asked. 3 days before Valentine's Day. He crossed his arms, defensive. "I need space to figure things out." I looked at him for a long moment. The man I'd planned to marry. The future I'd already rearranged my life around. The person now asking for permission to test drive another version of his life while keeping me idling in neutral. "Okay," I said. He blinked. "Okay?" "Okay," I repeated. "Take all the time you need." For a split second, he looked almost disappointed, like he'd been expecting tears, or begging, or some dramatic proof that I couldn't survive without him. "Really?" he asked. "You're okay with this?" "I'm saying take your break," I said. "Figure out what you want. I won't stop you." He studied me, confused. "You're being weirdly calm about this." "What would you prefer?" I asked. Should I cry? Beg? Would that prove my love better than 3 years of actually being there for you? He didn't answer. "I'm going to stay with my sister for a few days," he said finally, "just to clear my head." "Sure," I said. He hesitated, then added, "You're not going to, freak out or anything?" I almost laughed. Instead, I watched him pack a bag, watched him avoid eye contact, watched the door close behind him with a soft, final click. The moment he left, I canceled everything I'd planned for Valentine's week, the dinner reservation and the weekend trip. The deposits were non-refundable. Honestly, that felt cheaper than the emotional cost of sitting at that table alone or dragging myself through a getaway built on denial. Then I returned the earrings. Got store credit. Used it to buy myself a watch I'd been eyeing for months. Something simple. Something just for me. It felt strange. It also felt right. That night, I sat alone on the couch and let myself think, really think, about the last few months. The late nights he said were just work. The sudden obsession with self-improvement. The emotional distance I'd chalked up to wedding stress. At some point, almost without thinking, I opened my phone and checked our location sharing. He'd never turned it off. He wasn't at his sister's house. He was across town, at an apartment complex I didn't recognize. I stared at the screen for a long time, took a screenshot, saved it. Then I turned off my own location sharing so he couldn't see where I was. The apartment felt different once he was gone. Not empty, just quieter, like a place that had finally stopped holding its breath. I didn't cry that first night. I didn't pace or replay the conversation on a loop the way I used to after smaller fights. I sat with my legs tucked under me, the glow of the city filtering in through the blinds, and let the stillness settle. Silence always feels unnatural when you're used to explaining yourself. I slept better than I expected. The next morning, sunlight crept across the kitchen counter, landing on the spot where his keys used to be. I made coffee out of habit, poured 2 cups without thinking, then stopped. 1 cup went untouched, cooling beside the sink. I poured it out without ceremony. My phone buzzed around mid-morning. "Missing you already. Hope you're doing okay." I read it once, then again. Not because it moved me, but because I wanted to understand the intention behind it. If he missed me, he wouldn't be across town. If he was worried about me, he wouldn't have needed space. If this break was really about clarity, he wouldn't be checking in like a landlord making sure the property hadn't burned down. I didn't respond. That text wasn't love, it was maintenance, keeping me warm on the back burner while he explored his options. I went about my day anyway. Work emails, a grocery run, the mundane mechanics of a life that had apparently been too safe to hold his attention. I noticed how calm my body felt moving through it all. No tight chest, no buzzing anxiety, just a steady, grounded awareness that something fundamental had shifted. That night, curiosity nudged at me again. Not suspicion, not panic, just a quiet, rational urge to confirm what my instincts had already accepted. I opened my phone, tapped into our shared location. He was still there. Same apartment complex, same pin on the map, unmoving. I didn't feel the rush of adrenaline I'd expected. No spike of anger, no heartbreak, just a deep, settling certainty. He hadn't gone to his sister's. He hadn't needed space. He hadn't been confused. He'd been deciding between options. I didn't take another screenshot. I didn't need more proof. I simply left my own location sharing off, the decision already made. The next day passed the same way, quiet, functional. He didn't come home. He didn't call. Another text came through that evening. Something vague about hoping I wasn't mad, about needing time to think. I left that one unread. Silence, I was learning, wasn't weakness. It was clarity. It was refusing to participate in a narrative designed to keep me suspended in uncertainty. By the time the night before Valentine's Day arrived, I wasn't waiting for him to come back. I wasn't wondering what I'd say if he did. I was already gone, just not physically. What I didn't know yet was that my refusal to chase him had caught the attention of someone else, someone who saw through the performance from the outside. And by morning, that quiet break he thought he was controlling was about to shift in a direction he never saw coming. The message came the next morning. It was early enough that my coffee hadn't even finished brewing when my phone lit up on the counter. I almost ignored it out of habit, another reflex I was starting to unlearn, but the name made me pause. Evan, my boyfriend's cousin. We'd always gotten along. He was the kind of person who noticed things, who asked real questions instead of filling silence with noise. At family gatherings, he was usually the one leaning against a doorway, quietly observing while everyone else performed. Once, after a particularly awkward dinner, he'd joked, half under his breath, that I was way too emotionally functional for this family. At the time, I'd laughed it off. Now, his message read, "Hey, I hope this isn't weird, but are you okay?" I stared at it for a long moment before typing back. "I've been better." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I figured," he replied. "He posted something last night." That made my stomach tighten. Not because I cared what my boyfriend was posting, but because I knew what it would be. "Posted what?" I asked. "One of those taking time to reset stories," Evan wrote. "Spa lighting. Inspirational quote. Very him." I let out a dry laugh I hadn't realized I was holding in. "Yeah," I typed. "That tracks." "He told the family you're being unsupportive," Evan continued. "That you don't understand his emotional journey." There it was, the narrative, already forming, already spreading. I set my phone down for a second, pressed my palm flat against the counter, and inhaled slowly. When I picked it back up, my response was measured. Did he mention asking for a break 3 days before Valentine's Day? The dots froze. Then, no. Did he mention lying about where he's staying? This time, the pause was longer. "No," Evan finally replied. "He said he needed space, and you didn't handle it well." I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, recognition. He's not staying with his sister, I wrote. He's been at the same apartment across town since he left. Another long pause. I was afraid of that, Evan wrote. Afraid of what? I asked. That this wasn't confusion, he said. That it was strategy. We sat in that shared understanding for a moment. Two people connected by proximity to the same problem, but standing on very different sides of it. Do you want to talk about it? He asked. In person, I mean. No pressure. I hesitated, not because it felt inappropriate, but because it felt unexpectedly grounding. Like someone had reached out a hand without trying to pull me anywhere. Coffee, I replied. Today? Yeah, he said. I know a quiet place. No judgment. No opinions unless you ask for them. I smiled for the first time in days. When I met Evan later that afternoon, it felt nothing like a date. No awkward energy, no unspoken tension, just two people sitting across from each other, cups cooling between us, speaking plainly. I told him everything. The conversation, the word safe, the timing, the lie about his sister, the location pin that hadn't moved in days. Evan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back slightly and exhaled. He's with someone, he said simply. I know, I replied. He wanted a break so he could test it out, Evan continued, without consequences, without being the bad guy. That's exactly how it felt, I said, like I was being parked, just in case. Evan nodded. He's done this before. Not exactly like this, but close enough. Something about that made my shoulders loosen. You're handling this better than most people would, he said after a moment. I'm not handling it, I corrected. I'm just not chasing him. Evan's mouth twitched, something like respect flickering across his face. Good, he said, because he was counting on you two. When we stood to leave, there was no dramatic moment. No lingering looks. Just an easy, unexpected sense of alignment. As we stepped outside, Evan glanced at his phone and then back at me. Do you have plans tomorrow? He asked casually. Tomorrow. Valentine's Day. I did, I said. I canceled them. He nodded. Me too. First one single in a while. I considered him for a second. The timing, the irony, the quiet rebellion of it. Coffee was good, I said. Maybe tomorrow we upgrade to dinner, strictly as two people refusing to sit at home waiting for someone else to decide their worth. Evan smiled. Anti-Valentine solidarity. Exactly. What neither of us said out loud, but both of us felt, was that this wasn't about revenge. It was about opting out. And somewhere across town, my boyfriend still thought he was in control of the pause. By the end of Valentine's Day, he was going to learn just how wrong he was. Valentine's Day arrived without ceremony. No anticipation, no countdown, just a quiet morning and a sense of resolve that surprised me with its steadiness. I woke up early, sunlight stretching across the bedroom wall in pale strips. For the first time in days, I didn't check my phone right away. I made coffee, took a shower, chose clothes without wondering what message they sent. The absence of that constant mental negotiation felt liberating. My phone buzzed while I was tying my shoes. Happy Valentine's Day, he'd written. I've been thinking about you a lot. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then set the phone face down on the counter. Thinking I'd learned didn't mean choosing. By the time evening came, the city felt different. Restaurants glowed warmer, sidewalks filled with couples holding hands, bouquets wrapped in brown paper, laughter spilling out of doorways. I felt oddly invisible moving through it all, untethered, unclaimed. Evan was already out in the restaurant when I arrived. Nothing fancy. A small place tucked between a bookstore and a nail salon. Low lighting, simple menu. The kind of spot you go to because the food is good, not because it photographs well. Glad you came, he said as I slid into the booth. Me too, I replied, and realized I meant it. We ordered wine, talked about neutral things at first. Work, family dynamics. The unspoken relief of not having to perform romance on a day that demands it. Somewhere between this first glass and the second, my shoulders relaxed. I laughed, really laughed, at something he said about his uncle's obsession with conspiracy podcasts. It felt human, easy, nothing like the tension I'd grown used to over the last few months. That was when my phone rang. His name lit up the screen. I didn't answer immediately. Evan noticed, raising an eyebrow. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, might as well. I picked up. Hey, he said, voice bright, almost manic. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, I replied evenly. I've been thinking about you all day, he continued. About us. And I realized something. Did you? I asked. Yes, he said quickly. I don't need a break. I know what I want now. I want you. I waited, let the words hang there. Where are you? He asked. I could hear restaurant noise on his end, glasses clinking, voices overlapping. Out, I said. With who? I glanced across the table at Evan, who was now openly smiling, curiosity flickering in his eyes. For dinner, I added. There was a beat. Then, you're at a restaurant? On Valentine's Day? Yes. With who? He pressed. With your cousin, I said calmly. The silence that followed was profound. Not dropped call silence. Not bad reception. Shock. My cousin? He repeated, like the words didn't fit together. It's not a date, I said. It's two single people having dinner on Valentine's Day. We're not on a break anymore, he said quickly. I just told you. I want to come home. I want us back. You asked for a break, I replied. I gave you one. That's not how this works, he snapped. You can't just go out with my cousin. According to you, I said, I can do whatever I want. That was the whole point. I heard his breathing change. Faster now, sharper. That was different, he said. You were supposed to miss me. There it was. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Evan reached across the table and gently took the phone from my hand. Hey, he said into it. Quick question. There was a muffled protest on the other end. Does the woman you've been staying with know you're engaged? Evan asked calmly. Or did you forget to mention that while you were finding yourself? A shrill, incoherent sound erupted through the speaker. Evan smiled, ended the call, and slid the phone back to me. That felt necessary, he said. My phone immediately began buzzing. Texts flooding in. You're going to regret this. I can't believe you would do this to me. My own cousin? You're sick. We're done. The engagement is off. I showed Evan the screen. He shrugged. Wasn't it already off when he asked for a break to stay with someone else? Technically, I said. Then he's just catching up to reality. We ordered dessert. By the time we stepped outside, it was close to midnight. I silenced my phone. Do not disturb. No more vibrations. No more flashing demands for attention. Evan paused by the curb. You want company walking in? I shook my head. He's probably there. I don't want to give him more ammunition. Fair, he said. Text me when you're okay. I nodded and headed toward the apartment alone. When I unlocked the door, he was sitting on the couch, face blotchy, eyes red, still dressed like he'd come straight from wherever he'd been pretending to be honest. We need to talk, he said. I closed the door behind me. Oh, I replied. We already are. He was sitting exactly where he'd left me 3 days earlier. Same couch, same angle, like he'd paused the scene and expected to resume it on his terms. We need to talk, he said again, voice strained now, stripped of the practiced calm. I set my keys down slowly, took off my coat. I didn't rush. I didn't perform urgency for him. About what? I asked. The break you asked for? The woman you've been staying with? Or the part where you're angry I didn't wait patiently while you experimented? His jaw tightened. I didn't cheat. We're on a break, he added quickly, like a legal clause he thought protected him. A break you requested, I said, 3 days before Valentine's Day, to see if you missed me, while staying at another woman's apartment. That's not what happened, he snapped. You're twisting everything. I'm listing facts, I replied. You asked for space. You lied about where you were staying. You expected me to stay loyal while you figured out your options. His eyes flicked to my phone, still dark in my hand. You tracked me, he said suddenly, seizing on it. That's a complete violation of my privacy. You never turned off location sharing, I said calmly. I didn't hack anything. I looked. That's still controlling, he shot back. That's exactly the kind of behavior that made me need space. I actually laughed then, not loudly, just once, a short, incredulous sound. I'm controlling, I repeated. You asked for permission to sleep with someone else without consequences, and I'm controlling. He stood up, pacing now, hands running through his hair. You don't understand how hard this was for me. I was confused. I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. You knew exactly how to tell me, I said. You rehearsed it. I want a break to see if I miss you. That wasn't confusion. That was strategy. He stopped pacing, turned to face me. I didn't think you'd actually do anything, he said. There it was. The truth slipped out, unguarded and unfiltered. I didn't think you'd go out with anyone, he continued, especially not my cousin. So the break only applied to you, I said. I was supposed to sit here, miserable, proving how much I needed you, while you had fun. That's not what I meant, he said weakly. But that's what you expected, I replied. You wanted a test. You just didn't expect me to pass it by walking away. His face crumpled then, anger giving way to desperation. I made a mistake, he said. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, I said. Forgetting an anniversary is a mistake. This was a plan. He stepped closer. I love you. I didn't move. No, I said quietly. You loved how safe I made your life. You loved knowing I'd be here no matter what. That's not the same thing. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Finally, he exhaled sharply. I want the ring back. Okay, I said. I walked into the bedroom, opened in the drawer where the ring box had sat untouched since the night he left, picked it up. For a moment, I held it in my palm, surprised by how little weight it carried now. When I handed it to him, his fingers hesitated before closing around it. That's it? He asked. You're not even going to fight for us? I met his eyes. After 3 years, you asked for a break to be with someone else, I said. What exactly am I supposed to fight for? He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, not as his safety net, not as his backup, as a person who had chosen differently than he expected. Without another word, he grabbed his bag and stormed out, the door slamming hard enough to rattle the frame. I locked it behind him. That night, alone in the apartment, I slept better than I had in months. And I knew, without a trace of doubt, that whatever came next, I would never again agree to be someone's option. The fallout didn't wait until morning. It started less than an hour after he left, my phone lighting up like a warning signal I'd learned to recognize too late in other people's lives. His mother called first. I didn't answer. Then his sister. Then an aunt. Then his mother again. By the time I set my phone face down on the coffee table, it had already rung 7 times. I let it stay there, vibrating itself into silence. The next day was worse. I answered his mother's call on the 8th attempt, not because I felt obligated, but because I wanted to hear how the story had already been rewritten. You need to apologize to my son, she said without greeting. For what? I asked. For humiliating him, she replied. For going on a date with his own cousin. For being cruel and vindictive when he was trying to be honest with you. I leaned back against the kitchen counter, staring at the wall where our engagement photo had hung until 3 days ago. Did he tell you, I asked calmly, that he spent the break he asked for at another woman's apartment? There was a pause. That's not the point, she said tightly. It's exactly the point, I replied. He wanted freedom to explore other options. I didn't stop him. He just didn't like that the freedom applied to me too. You were engaged, she snapped. You had responsibilities. So did he, I said. He chose to ignore them. She hung up on me. His sister texted later that afternoon, a long message about boundaries and privacy and how I'd crossed a line by tracking him. I replied with one sentence. He never turned off location sharing. I just looked. There was no response to that. His father called that evening. His tone was different. Tired, careful. I want to hear what happened from your perspective, he said. So I told him, everything, slowly, without embellishment. When I finished, there was another pause, this one heavier. I'm not going to defend what he did, he said finally. But you have to understand, this puts the family in a difficult position. I understand, I said, but I didn't create the situation. No, he agreed quietly. You didn't. That was the end of the conversation. It was also the last reasonable exchange I would have with anyone directly tied to him. Meanwhile, Evan and I kept talking. Not romantically, not yet. Just honestly, he was the only person who didn't try to soften what had happened or spin it into something more palatable. The only one who didn't ask me to be smaller so someone else could stay comfortable. They're rallying around him, Evan told me over coffee a few days later. Full victim mode. I sighed. Of course they are. He's telling everyone you were cold, Evan continued, that you drove him away, that when he tried to come back, you'd already replaced him, with me. Replaced him? I scoffed. We had dinner, once. I know, Evan said, but that's not the story they're telling. I looked at him. What about your family? His mouth tightened slightly. My mom called me a traitor, he said. My aunt won't speak to me. My sister said I should be ashamed. Guilt pricked at me, sharp and unwelcome. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause problems for you. You didn't, he said without hesitation. He did. He stirred his coffee, eyes thoughtful. And honestly, he added, the fact that they're blaming you, and me, instead of holding him accountable says everything about why he thought he could get away with this. I nodded slowly. This wasn't just about a breakup anymore. It was about who was allowed to tell the truth, and who paid the price for it. And while the family was busy circling the wagons, protecting the version of events that made them most comfortable, something else was unfolding quietly in the background. A thread I hadn't pulled yet, a truth that was about to surface whether anyone was ready for it or not. I hadn't gone looking for her. That's the part people always get wrong when they hear this story later. They assume there was some dramatic investigation, late night scrolling, obsessive digging, a need to prove something. The truth was quieter than that. The truth was that once you stop lying to yourself, the answers stop hiding. It started with a name I'd heard too many times to count. A coworker, always mentioned casually, always framed as harmless. Someone he grabbed lunch with because their schedules lined up. someone whose name appeared in stories that didn't need a name attached to them at all. At the time, I'd filed it away under nothing to worry about, because when you trust someone, you don't interrogate the background noise of their life. But trust, once broken, sharpens your vision. Evan was the one who first said it out loud. "It's her," he said, scrolling through his phone as we sat at the same cafe we'd come to treat like neutral ground. "The apartment complex, it matches." I leaned forward slightly. "You're sure?" He nodded. "I recognized it from a holiday party a couple years ago. He mentioned she lived there. Same layout, same parking structure." Something in my chest loosened, not because it hurt less, but because the fog finally cleared. "She's been liking all his posts," Evan continued, "for months. The comments are familiar." He turned the screen toward me. "Always proud of you. You deserve happiness. Anyone would be lucky to have you." They weren't explicit. They didn't need to be. They were the kind of comments meant to be noticed by one person and dismissed by everyone else. "This didn't start during the break," I said quietly. "No," Evan agreed. "The break was just when he stopped pretending." I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel the urge to confront her or demand explanations. What I felt was clarity. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a crisis of identity. This was a slow, deliberate exit strategy, one that required me to stay exactly where I was, untouched and unquestioning, until he decided which door he preferred. Later that evening, after Evan left, I sat on my couch and stared at my phone for a long time. Then I sent one message. Not to her, to him. "You should probably tell her you were engaged when this started." That was it. No accusations, no insults, no threats. He blocked me on social media within the hour, but not before something interesting happened. His social media went quiet. No more quotes, no more healing journey posts, no more carefully curated vulnerability. Evan noticed it first. "Looks like Paradise had a leak," he said dryly when we spoke the next day. Apparently, the conversation he'd been avoiding finally happened. I didn't hear it directly, but the version that made its way back to me was almost laughably predictable. She'd asked him point blank if he'd really been engaged when they started talking. He tried to soften it, minimize it, explain it away. Technically yes, but emotionally no. It was basically over. We were just going through the motions. She hadn't bought it. People who are willing to be the other option are rarely willing to be lied to themselves. Within days, whatever fantasy he'd been building collapsed under the weight of its own dishonesty. And that's when the messages started. First, anger. "Who do you think you are? You had no right to message her. You're obsessed. You can't let go." Then guilt. "I can't believe you would try to sabotage my happiness. I thought you were better than this." Then manipulation. "I realize now that you're hurting. I hurt you. I made a terrible mistake. Can we please just talk? I still love you." I didn't respond to any of it. I screenshot everything, dated it, filed it away. When someone cycles through emotions that quickly, they're not communicating. They're throwing hooks, hoping one of them will catch. When none of them did, he escalated. He started telling mutual friends I was stalking him, that I couldn't accept the breakup, that I was trying to ruin his life because I couldn't stand to see him move on. It would have been almost impressive if it hadn't been so transparent. 5 days after Valentine's Day, he showed up at the apartment unannounced. I didn't let him in. "Please," he said through the door. 5 minutes, I just want to talk." "About what?" I asked. "Us," he said, "our future." I laughed softly on the other side of the door. "What changed?" I asked. He hesitated. "Things didn't work out," he admitted. "Not the way I expected." "So she ended it," I said. Silence. "So now you're back," I continued, voice steady, "looking for the place you thought would still be open." "I was confused," he said. "I thought I wanted something else, but what I really want is you." "No," I replied. "What you want is a backup plan." "That's not fair," he snapped. "It's accurate," I said, "and I'm not interested in that role." He left angry, hurt, certain, still, that I was the villain in his story. Somehow in his mind, I always would be. And for the first time, I understood how freeing that was. Because when someone decides you're the villain, no matter what you do, you're finally free to stop trying to be the hero. The thing about desperation is that it always arrives wearing urgency. About a week after Valentine's Day, just long enough for the dust to settle and the fantasy to fully collapse, he came back louder than before, less controlled, less rehearsed. That was when the lease became a weapon. We were both on it, both names. Shared responsibility, shared liability. A detail I knew he'd eventually try to use. The apartment manager was polite but firm when I called. "You'll need to come to an agreement between yourselves," she said, "or wait until the lease ends in 4 months." 4 months was an eternity when someone was determined to keep their foot in the door. He texted me that night. "We need to talk about the apartment. I stared at the message for a moment before replying. What about it? You can't just push me out, he wrote. I live there too. You left, I replied. You asked for a break. You moved out. Temporarily, he shot back. You don't get to decide everything. There it was again. The assumption that I'd eventually bend, that I'd get tired, that I'd compromise just to make the tension stop. I didn't. Instead, I offered him a deal. I'd take over the full lease. He'd get his deposit back, $1,400. We'd walk away clean. He laughed when I suggested it. That's it? He said over the phone. After everything, you think that's fair? I think it's simple, I replied. You don't want the apartment. You don't want the lease. You just don't want to lose. He demanded more. Half the furniture value. Compensation for emotional damages. Reimbursement for things he'd never paid for in the first place. I listened, then said one sentence. Take it up with a lawyer. He didn't have one, and he couldn't afford one. That became clear quickly. The coworker, the one he'd thought would be his soft landing, had not turned out to be the financial rescue he'd imagined. She made about the same as he did, enough to live comfortably, not enough to replace the lifestyle he'd enjoyed on our combined income. Reality, it turned out, had a budget. While he spiraled, Evan stayed steady. We talked almost every day. Texts that started as check-ins turned into long conversations. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became hours of sitting across from each other, not filling silence, just letting it exist. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden confessions, no impulsive crossing of lines, just something building slowly, naturally. One evening, as we sat in my living room with takeout containers balanced between us, I finally said it out loud. Is this weird? Evan looked up. What? This, I said, gesturing vaguely between us. You're his cousin. There are rules. Rules made by people who've never been in this situation, he said evenly. He destroyed your relationship. Not you, not me. Your family will never accept it, I said. Probably not, he agreed. Does that bother you? He thought about it. Actually thought. Less than it should, he said. Some families value appearances more than integrity. I'm old enough to know the difference. Something settled between us then. Not a promise, not a declaration. A decision. 2 weeks after Valentine's Day, the final attempt came. He showed up again, this time during the day. I didn't open the door. Please, he said through it. I know I messed up. I know that now. You knew then, I replied. I was scared, he insisted. I panicked. No, I said. You calculated. There was a long pause. Are you really choosing this? He asked. Choosing him over me? I rested my forehead briefly against the door. I'm choosing myself, I said. He's just not standing in the way. That was the last time we spoke face to face. A few days later, he signed the paperwork. Transferred the lease, took the deposit, left without another word. It cost me $1,400. It bought me peace. And when I stood alone in the apartment afterward, walls bare where his things had been, rooms suddenly larger, I realized something that surprised me. The furniture was mine. The kitchenware was mine. The bed, the TV, the life, weighed mostly on my side of the scale. He hadn't built a future with me. He'd just been occupying space. And now, finally, the space was mine again. The apartment didn't feel empty once he was gone. It felt honest. For the first time since we'd moved in together, I could see the place clearly, without the weight of compromise pressed into every corner. I rearranged the furniture, not dramatically, just enough to change the energy. I moved the couch away from the wall, swapped the bedroom lamp for something warmer, painted one accent wall a soft, grounding gray. I bought plants, real ones, the kind you have to care for. It felt like reclaiming territory I hadn't realized I'd been slowly surrendering. His final communication came through email. 3 pages. Carefully written. Emotional language wrapped around accusations so gently you could almost miss them if you weren't looking for the pattern. He was devastated by my betrayal. He never meant for things to go this far. He still loved me, despite my cruelty. He hoped I would one day realize what I'd lost. The last line stood out. You and Evan deserve each other. I stared at it for a long moment before archiving the email. Not deleting. Archiving. Documentation matters when someone has already shown you how comfortable they are rewriting reality. When I showed it to Evan later, he read it once, then laughed softly. She's right about one thing, he said. We probably do deserve each other, just not in the way she thinks. We didn't rush anything after that. No announcements, no declarations, no attempts to prove anything to anyone. Almost a month passed before we officially called it what it was. We took it slow on purpose. Dinner, movies, long conversations about values instead of chemistry, about how we handle conflict. about what we'd both tolerated in the past and what we were no longer willing to accept. He was different from my ex in ways that mattered. When something bothered him, he said it. When he needed space, he asked for it without disappearing. When he wanted something, he didn't disguise it as self-discovery. One night, sitting on my balcony with the city humming below us, he said something that stayed with me. "I know this is complicated," he said. "My family thinks I'm a traitor. His mother barely speaks to me. Holidays are going to be awkward forever." I nodded. "I know. I just want to make sure you understand what you're choosing," he continued. "There's going to be judgment, whispers, stories." "I understand," I said. "I've already lived through worse." He smiled at that, not triumphantly, just calmly. "Me too," he said. Some family members cut him off completely. Others sent passive-aggressive cards on holidays. One cousin unfollowed him on social media after calling him the betrayer at a dinner he wasn't invited to. And yet, his father still checked in. His brother thought the whole situation was hilarious and kept asking for updates. He had friends who saw the truth without needing it explained. "Family isn't just blood," Evan told me once. "Family is who tells you the truth when it's uncomfortable, who doesn't enable your worst impulses." My ex never had that. He had people who excused him, who softened his consequences, who convinced him he was always the victim. And when that stopped working on me, he lost his footing entirely. I ran into him once, weeks later, a grocery store, because life has a sense of humor. He saw me first, froze, turned his cart around and walked the other way without a word. I didn't follow. I didn't call out. I didn't need closure from someone who had already shown me exactly who they were. The apartment is quiet now. Different. Evan comes over a few nights a week. We cook, watch bad reality TV, talk about our days. Ordinary things. Safe things, but not the kind of safe that feels like settling. The kind that feels like choosing. Is it perfect? No. Some people still believe his version of the story. Some always will. He's apparently telling anyone who'll listen that I was cold, that he escaped a toxic relationship. I've stopped correcting them. You can't control what other people think of you. You can only control what you tolerate. Here's what I learned. When someone asks for a break right before a romantic holiday, they're not trying to find themselves. They're trying to find someone else, while keeping you on standby. You don't have to be the standby. You can walk away. You can go silent. You can let them discover exactly how much they needed you. And when they come running back, panicked, empty-handed, shocked that the door isn't where they left it, you can be somewhere else entirely. Maybe even at a small restaurant on an ordinary night, building something real with someone who never needed to test whether they'd miss you. That chapter of my life is closed. And for the first time in a long while, the future feels like something I'm walking toward, not something I'm being left behind in.